So when I was 12, there was this bridge that was under construction near our house. It was part of a larger interstate highway project, and it spanned a major river. The river wasn't as big as the Mississippi, but it was still really big. As kids, we liked to explore the construction zone, play swords with bits of rebar, climb all over the earth movers, etc. At the time of this story, the bridge was mostly just gigantic pylons set in a row across the river. They must have been 300 feet high. Maybe not that high. I'm no judge of distance. They were high enough that you couldn't see your spit hit the water even if you hawked a really big loogie. Only 2 or 3 spans between pylons were paved at either end. 3 or 4 spans in the middle had nothing but enormous concrete beams laying across them. No road, no pavement whatsoever, and no handrails. Just a couple of feet of concrete, lots of open air, and the river hundreds of feet below. So naturally, we decided to use those beams to walk across the entire bridge. There was a lot of planning involved. We picked a Sunday so no construction workers would be there. We packed lunches. We made sure our bike tires were inflated. We wore good shoes and double-knotted the laces. That sort of stuff. The plan was to get to the other side and then hit up a nearby A&W root beer place for a victory float. Oh, and we were going to take our bikes with us because the A&W was a bit of haul from the other side of the bridge. This all made perfect sense at the time. At some point in this planning process, my little brother found out and threatened to blab to our parents if he wasn't included. So we were stuck with inviting him. That would later be our downfall. No pun intended. The day came. Weather was good. We sneaked our bikes into the construction zone and glided down the empty Interstate to be into the river valley. We paused at the edge of the last paved bit and looked down. We spit our loogies down and marveled at the vast emptiness. But nobody, not even my little brother, chickened out when we picked the beam we were going to cross. The bikes didn't make the trip. There was just too much rebar sticking up from the beams. The loops and spikes would have made shepherding a bike across too difficult. We decided to leave them behind and abandon the idea of going to A&W. The beams were pretty wide, almost as much as our arms spread out. Plenty of room to walk, and really not an issue if you didn't look down. After the first 50 feet or so, it was no worse than a sidewalk, albeit one so high that you'd certainly die if you fell off it. Even so, the only real danger was tripping over the rebar sticking out of the beams. It wasn't like a walk in the park, and we were all more than a little nervous at the thought of falling to our deaths. But we kept going, 1 foot at a time. On the center pylon, there was a sort of wide platform where some tools and equipment were stationed. So we stopped there to rest a bit. Big mistake. Most of the kids were starting to panic just a little bit because we were finally realizing just how long it was between pylons and how much further we had to go. We had only planned on being there long enough to catch our breath, maybe eat a sandwich, pee off the edge, etc., and then move on to the other side of the bridge. But then 2 of the kids, including my little brother, balked at the idea of continuing. At first, the older kid just wanted to go back, and to be honest, I think we all felt the same way. But putting that first foot on the beam proved to be harder than we all thought it would be. Even I got a small case of rubber legs when I contemplated leaving the relative safety of the mid-bridge platform. A couple of the other kids set off though, so I followed, thinking my brother and the rest of them wouldn't be far behind. But I was wrong. 3 kids total, my brother and 2 other guys, just couldn't bring themselves to go back on the beam. We tried coaxing. We tried shaming. We told them to just crawl if they couldn't walk. No dice. They refused to leave the platform, and my brother started to get seriously upset, even pleading for me to go get our dad. In the end, we had to go home to ask for adult assistance. Did I stay there to comfort my brother? No. I was an asshole. I just left him there with the other 2 and hoofed it back across the beams to get my bike. None of the kids who made it across with me had younger brothers still stuck on the platform, so I had to be the one to go fess up. Telling your parents that your little brother is stuck on the unfinished bridge down where the new interstate is crossing the river is not something I recommend as a positive family bonding activity. My mom freaked out. My dad started yelling. No one seemed to accept, but he would have ratted us out as an excuse for bringing him along. We called the cops. The cops came to our house. I had to explain what happened to a bunch of people who really didn't want to believe me in the first place. But hey, I got a ride in the back of a cop car with the lights blazing and siren wailing, which was cool, although I really couldn't appreciate it at the time. When we got to the bridge, fire trucks of all types and sizes were already there. I guess they thought they could just extend a ladder across a major US river. I seem to remember it being hours before they finally decided to send in the air cav. By then, there were a couple of firemen out on the central platform, and a bunch of folks from the construction crew were out there with them. They had safety harnesses on, which honestly just made the rest of us look bad. But eventually, everyone left the platform except for the 3 remaining kids and a couple of firemen. And then we could hear the sound of a helicopter approaching. It was a life flight copter, so maybe they were hedging their bets in case they needed to take someone to the hospital if they fell off the bridge or something. It didn't take all that long to retrieve the 3 kids from the platform. My little brother was the first one to be airlifted off. They strapped him in one of those patient baskets, reeled him up, and then whoopity-whooped over to a clearing on our side of the river. We had to stick around for a little bit to talk to the police. Side note, nobody gave up the names of the other kids. And then we went home to what was probably the longest grounding of my life. The only silver lining to this whole thing was that the story got out in school and we got some serious street cred with our classmates. Also, my brother was the envy of everyone we knew for getting a helicopter ride,